Hey there, guys. Um, I know I wasn't feeling too well yesterday, and I put out my first diary entry. I'm still proud of that. But today we're going back into the Kingdom Hearts segment. Now, I've completed talking about my experiences with the first time I played the games. Um, I left out Kingdom Hearts 3, of course, and we'll be getting to that later on. But before I played Kingdom Hearts 3, I went back and I replayed all of the other games. And so now I'm going to start talking about my replay of the games. And I learned a lot on the replays, almost more than I did on the original playthroughs. The original playthroughs very much went hand in hand with my experiences of trauma. The original Kingdom Hearts game went hand in hand with my sexual abuse and repression. The later Kingdom Hearts games went along hand in hand with my step into the use of psychiatric medication and bad friendships, like where I was not being nice, I was gaslighting, they were gaslighting, we were all using each other. Um, so those were my original playthroughs, and upon replaying the games, it kind of gave me a different perspective. I was able to look back at the traumas that I'd been through the first time I played the games and process them in a different light. So that's what we're going to be talking about, and I'm just going to jump right back in. I'm going to start out with a quote from Yen Sid. Um, What if the challenges of our past were in fact a map to the light and darkness that battles within us all? And I think that quote right there is the description of Kingdom Hearts. I think that is why Tetsuya Nomura created Kingdom Hearts. He is trying to give a map of the light and darkness that battles within us all. And I think that's why it reaches out to so many people. Yeah, the story doesn't always make sense. Yeah, there's plot holes. Yeah, it's silly and strange, and it also reaches out to that inner child in your heart. It also reaches out to you. And a lot of us who enjoy the game, we can really feel it reaching out to us. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to write a map of the light and darkness that battles within my own heart. I had accepted the fact that I had been raped. I was still the only one who knew about it, and there was still a battle between light and darkness that was being fought within my heart, and I decided to make a plan. Step 1 was to go to college and get a degree. Step 2 was to take a break from school and work. Step 3 was to find a therapist specializing in trauma therapy. Step 4 was to look back on my traumas and begin the healing process. And step 5 was to just live the rest of my life without worry, without being haunted by my own past. The first 3 steps were fairly easy. I went to trade school for 2 years and I got a degree. I saved up enough money to take a decent break from work. And I found a pretty amazing therapist. I don't feel like I need to write about any of those things, so I'm just going to skip to step 3. And step 3 begins with me replaying Birth by Sleep. I did them in different order. I originally played them in release order, or close to release order. Chain of Memories was I played after 2. But now I'm playing them in chronological order of the series. So my replay of Birth by Sleep began about 6 months after I graduated from college. This time, instead of focusing solely on myself and what I was feeling, I decided to look at the bigger picture. My therapist and I began talking about a concept called intergenerational trauma. To understand the concept of intergenerational trauma and how it affected me, I needed to understand that all the trauma and pain I had been through did not begin with me. Terra was struggling with his own darkness. He grew up with high expectations put on him by the previous generation of Keyblade wielders. Unfortunately, Xehanort was there almost every step of the way, manipulating him. Xehanort begins pulling at the darkness within Terra's heart as a way to control him. Terra begins to feel like he is letting his loved ones down because he can't control his darkness. He says, "I swear I will not fail you again," to his father after failing his exam. Every time Terra is manipulated and ends up giving into the darkness, his shame and disappointment with himself begins to grow. As his shame begins to grow, so does his darkness, and he becomes easier to manipulate. There is a lot about Terra that reminds me of my own father. My dad was raised by the same people who hurt me as a child. He was raised by the same man that molested me and the same woman who manipulated me. For the first time, I was starting to see, if I were in this much pain from what happened to me, then my dad must be in pain too. He talked a lot about the traumas of his own childhood, but only after acknowledging my own trauma could I begin to perceive just how hard my dad must have had it growing up, and just how confused he must have been trying to connect to me and my mother. I was not the only one hurt as a child. My dad was hurt badly as well. Strength of heart will carry you through the hardest of trials. At the end of the game, Terra falls into Xehanort's manipulation for one last time. It's through Terra that Xehanort was able to reach Sora. My father chose to forgive his parents, and through him, my grandparents were able to abuse me. I'm not blaming my father for what happened. Instead, I'm merely just trying to look at the facts. Aqua was tasked by her master with keeping an eye on Terra and Ventus, making sure nothing goes wrong. She loves Terra and Ventus more than anything. Her goal was to guard her friends from darkness. She was placed with more responsibility on her shoulders than anyone else. Not only did she have to go day to day purifying any darkness from her own heart, but she felt responsible to keep her friends from falling into darkness as well. It's dangerous to fight darkness with light. That's a quote from, Fairy Godmother talking to Aqua. Aqua would try her best to go around fighting the darkness off, but she was advised early in the game that this doesn't work. The true challenge is to keep the light from fading even in the face of darkness. This is a lesson she would have trouble taking to heart, especially when it comes to herself. The master taught me that, this is a quote from Aqua, the master taught me that darkness needs to be destroyed. But how if not with light? Aqua reminds me of my mother. My mom never really talked about her childhood too much, or the pain that she went through. She was the opposite of my dad in that way. She was always trying to be responsible and taking care of everyone, even when it would hurt her and keep her away from the things she really wanted to be doing and the places she really wanted to be. From what I could see, it seemed as if my mom had tried her best to take on as much responsibility as she could and balance it on her shoulders. She would try to do all this even though she dealt with a lot of the same issues that I did. She dealt with bipolar disorder, manipulation, traumas she wouldn't talk about, and all the sorts of issues that go along with these things. No one can keep up that sort of pressure and responsibility forever. My mother also had a painful childhood. I didn't know much about it until recently. The game ends with Aqua falling into the realm of darkness. She sacrifices herself to keep her friends. She sacrifices herself to help her friends and ends up all alone because of it. Aqua ends up spending 10 years alone, without contact with the people who mean the most to her. When my mom and dad got divorced, she moved away. My mom did. When my mom and dad got divorced, my mom moved away. Our relationship has never been the same since. It feels like my mom just disappeared. I don't get to see her anymore, and it doesn't feel like we get the chance to know each other. I do hope she's doing okay, and I hope she doesn't feel too alone. Another part of the intergenerational trauma wasn't just Aqua and Terra passing off their pain to Riku and Kairi and Sora. It also had to do with Xehanort. Xehanort was born into a world already broken apart from the destruction of the Keyblade War. He is a truly evil man who did terrible things to so many people, and even though his actions are inexcusable, they are understandable. He was trying to heal the world. He misguidedly believed that the pain he was pushing onto all the people around him would give him the power to balance the world. And that's the whole reason Xehanort does all these terrible things he does in the games. Xehanort, as I've said before, represents my grandparents and all the terrible things they caused to the people around them. And just like intergenerational trauma doesn't just start and end with Terra and Aqua passing it down to Sora in the game, it doesn't start with my parents passing it down to me. Their parents passed it down to them, just like Xehanort passed it down to Terra and Aqua. My grandparents were both pretty terrible people who pushed their pain onto everyone around them. And I don't believe that they should be forgiven. But it is important to understand them in order to understand the cycle of intergenerational trauma that has been going on in my family line. Just as Just as in these games, the pain that Sora and Riku and Kairi... I already said that stuff. I'm just going to repeat myself. That pain, though, it doesn't even begin with Xehanort. Xehanort was born into that pain. He was born into a world ripped apart by darkness, just as my grandparents were. That pain goes back farther than any of us can imagine. Both of my grandparents were born into abusive households. My grandmother was born into a house of prostitution and sexual abuse. And my grandfather had a mentally ill mother who literally tried to sacrifice him to the sun god. Like, it's a crazy story where she was laying on him, trying to suffocate him out in the middle of the day underneath the sunshine as a way to sacrifice him to a sun god. Like, that's insane. Imagine growing up like that. Yeah, no, I don't forgive the man. I don't forgive my grandfather for raping me. I don't forgive him for hurting any of the people he hurt, because that's fucking terrible. But we need to understand that people don't just hurt other people for the hell of it. Humans are not just born to be careless of the people around them. They naturally, children do care about their families and the people around them. But there was trauma that went down in my family line for generations, many generations. My grandpa ended up getting taken away from his mom, and he grew up with distant family members that would physically abuse him. It's up to us, right here, right now, to decide to stop this cycle of pain that's passed down from parent to child throughout the generations. It's not an easy task whatsoever. Stopping that cycle begins with acknowledging that your pain does not begin and end with you. You are just one link in a chain. But you have to acknowledge you're one link in a chain. You gotta stop believing that you're the whole chain, that nothing else matters but you and what you're feeling. Stopping that cycle means acknowledging you're not the main character, but just instead, you're a child born into an unhealthy situation where everyone sees themselves as the main character. Stopping that cycle means an attempt to understand that the people who hurt you and understand how you are hurting those around you as well. We all want to believe we're the main character. We all want to believe we're the star. But we're not. We're all here together. We are all symbiotically living together. We are all part of the same structure. The belief that you're the main character, the belief that your emotions matter, and that other people's emotions don't matter because they hurt you. Like, yeah, it might be good for you to get away from the people that hurt you. It's definitely good to get away from the people that hurt you. But believing you're the main character only causes you to become like them, because that's what they believed. That's narcissism. And that's the environment I grew up in. Narcissistic households. So that was my goal, to understand and acknowledge my place in this cycle so that I might be the one to break it. The next game I played after Birth by Sleep, the next game that I replayed, was the original Kingdom Hearts. The next step towards acknowledging my place in this cycle would be to truly acknowledge everything that had happened to me and the way that those things made me feel. Even though I had finally admitted to myself that I had been raped, the pain didn't go away. Even though the pain didn't go away, I couldn't blame it all on the rape. There were other traumas in my life as well. The only way to stop these traumas from controlling me and influencing me negatively throughout the rest of my life would be to acknowledge and understand them. Acknowledging your trauma may sound simple, but it's truly more complicated than it seems. What's even bothering me half the time? I don't know. When I looked inside, my head felt like it was clouded and swirling with thoughts and emotions. My inner dialogue was rushing, and the emotions that went with them felt like a tornado spinning me around. I began playing the original Kingdom Hearts game again, And as I did, I found that specific memories would come up as I played through certain parts of the game. When the island got destroyed, I would think about my grandpa and the terrible things he did to me. When Donald told Sora to smile, I would think about trying to be happy and help my family take care of my grandma. And as I played through the game, this kept happening over and over. And this is when I began realizing that the first time I played through the game represented my step into repression. So this time I decided that I would use the game as a tool to help myself step out of repression. I began writing all of the thoughts and feelings I was having down as I played. At first, everything was just jumbled up, and sometimes memories would become obscured or attached to other memories. The things I were writing were confusing, but the more I kept writing, the clearer things became. My thoughts and emotions started to slow down, and I began to find a bit of clarity. Now, instead of using Kingdom Hearts as a way to escape reality, I'm now using it as a reward to deal with reality. I would only let myself play as long as I spent some time that day working on this memory project. I will admit, Kingdom Hearts is not the only tool I use on this project. I used an album from one of my favorite bands as a guideline to help me sort through my thoughts. The album was titled In Defense of the Genre. It's an album by the band Say Anything. And I end up naming my own project that I was creating In Defense, because that's how I felt as a child, as if I were always defending myself from my own inner pain. I wrote the project out solely for myself. It's a project a lot like this one, actually, where I just have like 30 pages written using a piece of artwork as like guardrails to keep me on track. And I'm not going to ever read In Defense to you guys on here. It's much more personal. I didn't realize just until I finished it how big it was going to be. It was a 30-page essay chronicling all the traumas I could remember from birth until now, and how each one affected me along the way. There wasn't very much that was uplifting about the project. It was mostly just there to help get all these traumatic memories down on paper, so I didn't have to keep carrying them around in my subconscious anymore. Still, when it was finished, I felt extremely proud. Something inside of me felt lighter. The pain was still there, but it wasn't quite as intense. I would still have to deal with that pain, but now I had a reference book I could bring into my therapy meetings to help me organize my thoughts. Only after finishing this project did I let myself finish the game, and it was one of the most rewarding feelings I've ever felt as I delivered that finishing blow to Ansem and watched the final cutscenes. Yeah, I'm not going to ever read In Defense to you guys. It's much more personal. I mean, this is extremely personal. This whole project, and you guys get the picture of everything that's In Defense by me reading you this project. The only difference is that In Defense is much more negative feeling. It's much more about just expressing the pain, and that's it. You know, I blame other people. I let all my anger and pain out. Where this project is more about trying to see a bigger picture and see how that pain and how all these steps along the way have helped me get to a better spot with myself. And I feel like this project is much more realistic because it includes the pain and the growth, where the In Defense project just included the pain. And that was a necessary step for me. It really was a necessary step, because you have to acknowledge your own pain. But staying there all the time is not the best for you, which is exactly why I'm not going to be reading it. Alright, on to the next game. The next one was Chain of Memories. But this time, I'm actually going to be talking more about Riku's portion of the story, which is titled Reverse Rebirth. As I played through Chain of Memories the second time, I began to realize it represented everything I wrote down about it before. Everything I've talked to you guys about it before. But this time, I resonated more with Riku's story. Riku's begins with Ansem, the Seeker of Darkness, taunting him. Ansem encourages Riku to stay asleep. This story is about Riku attempting to fight off the darkness that he carries within himself while he travels through worlds constructed of his own memories. The very first world Riku enters is Hollow Bastion. Hollow Bastion was Riku's new home after he lost the island. This is where he chose to give up his heart to the darkness. This world represented the regrets Riku has about himself and the manipulation that Ansem and Maleficent forced him through. The voice of Ansem taunts Riku, saying, "You cast away your home, your friends, everything, but at least they give you a nice room." Because Riku cast off everyone he loved in his past, he finds himself alone as he travels through his memories. The only company he has is that of monsters and those who manipulated him. I had just written that In Defense project I was talking to you about, in which I traveled through my own memories. In doing so, I found many painful memories and very few positive ones. All of my traumas were now right there on the surface of my life, no longer pushed down and repressed. I had nowhere to hide from the pain of my memories. As I looked through these memories, I found so many reasons to feel ashamed of myself and the things I had done. I felt like I had hurt so many people by trying to hide from my own pain. I felt like a monster. It was like there was this angry voice inside my head, blaming me for everything I had gone through. I could very much relate to Riku in this game. Ansem beckons Riku to accept the darkness and use it as his strength. Ansem calls Riku's light feeble. He's trying to convince Riku that his light is not strong enough to keep the darkness at bay. Sometimes this is what the voices in our heads sound like. They tell us that we have nothing positive about us, that we are not worthy of receiving or giving love and light. Whenever Riku is at his lowest, Mickey's spirit comes to him and offers words of advice. You've got to fight the darkness inside you. It won't be easy to do, I know, but please don't forget. Even in the darkest darkness, there's always a little bit of light. Riku goes through this game listening to Mickey's advice. Anytime possible, he chooses to fight off the darkness around him by looking for his own light within. I took Mickey's advice as well. This was my goal moving forward in the game, to fight off my own darkness by searching for a light that I can call my own. You grapple desperately with darkness. Desperation is fear. You fight the darkness because it frightens you. I truly was, and still am, afraid of my own darkness. I'm afraid of hurting those around me. I really am. I'm afraid that the people I love will leave me behind. I'm afraid of my own emotional instability. I'm afraid of my own fear eating me up from the inside. I'm afraid of all these things leading me to a place where I'm alone and I lose the ability to take care of myself, because to be honest, I've been there before. I'm afraid of being stuck at home because of the fact that my fear can make my whole body begin shaking and my skin feel like it's on fire. I'm afraid of how often this happens, because when it gets bad, it happens every day. Sometimes it's something big that triggers me, and sometimes it's something small. But much more than I'd like to admit, I find myself in a place where my body is shaking, my skin feels like it's on fire, and voices in my head begin saying terrible things to me. Sometimes when I find myself in this state, I also find myself doing things I'm completely ashamed of afterwards. How could I be anything except afraid of my darkness when it leads me to shake and cry at the smallest upsets? How could I accept my darkness when it leads me to hurt those that I love? After a failed battle with Lexaeus, Riku ends up giving into the darkness and using it to his advantage. Giving into his darkness sends Riku into another dimension, where he's even more alone than before. I honestly give into my darkness much more than I'd like to admit, and when I do give in, I always feel more alone and more shameful than before. How do you keep yourself from giving into your own darkness when it literally seeps out from within? How do you keep yourself from giving into your own darkness when it makes your hands shake, your skin burn, and your head spin? I mean, I still don't know the answer to these questions. I'm still searching. That's why I'm writing all this stuff. To let you guys know that you're not alone if you're feeling these things too. It's fucking terrible sometimes how much it affects you. You can't think of anything except for pain. And just thinking about pain causes more pain. And it's not healthy. But how the hell are you supposed to break out of it? I still don't know. Naminé appears to Riku to give him advice. Don't run from the light. and don't fear the darkness, because both will make you stronger. The darkness inside your heart, it's vast and deep. But if you can, truly stare into it and never try to look away. You won't be afraid of anything again. Know that the darkness is there and don't give in. If you do that, you will gain strength, the kind that is unlike any other. So this is what I'm doing, even now as I write this. This whole project is my way of staring into my own darkness to find a strength that is uniquely my own. But just because Riku begins taking this advice to his heart, doesn't mean he's free of the manipulation of Ansem. And just because I'm staring into my own darkness to find my strength, doesn't mean that I am free of the shaking, the burning, and the spinning sensations that my body physically feels. I want you to face the darkness because you're the one who can. The game ends with Riku having a choice between walking the road of light or walking the road of darkness. And instead, he chooses to walk the middle road, the road to dawn. He chooses to walk toward the light while accepting the darkness he holds inside. I really appreciate this metaphor. This was my goal, to no longer hide from my own darkness and still search for a light that I can call my own. And this metaphor here, it goes along with a lot of Buddhist concepts, but I didn't know these concepts when I was playing these games. I got into Buddhism because of these games. I started exploring other spiritualities because of the ideas these games gave me. I was raised Christian. I was raised to believe that light is good and dark is bad. You know, any dark thought you have makes you evil and a sinner, and you need to be purified. And these games really did open me up to new concepts, new ideas that have helped me heal. And I know these games are silly, Disney, Square Enix, Final Fantasy crossover with, but I can't deny that they've changed my life, that these games helped introduce me to concepts I would have never understood before. There's that quote, I want you to face the darkness because you're the one who can. I think that's a really important quote, and I believe it applies to all of us. The universe is asking us to face our own darkness because we're the only one who can. We're the only one who can. If you don't face your darkness, it will rule you. It will manipulate you from the inside out. And I don't know, that it's just a very inspiring quote for me. I want you to face your darkness because you're the one who can. It also makes you feel like you can actually face your darkness. So while I was playing this game, I thought to myself, maybe one day I could be free of the shaking in my body, the burning on my skin, and the spinning in my head. I could be free of the stream of voices which continually tell me how horrible I am. I wasn't understanding that these voices, these sensations, these are my darkness. Even right now, it's still sinking in. I'm feeling it right now as we're talking. If these sensations are my darkness, then these are what I have to face, and these are what I have to accept. And trying to deny them, trying to run away from them, trying to live life like they're not there, is only going to make it worse. Alright, so there's still a few games left. There's 358, there's Kingdom Hearts 2, there's Recoded, and there's Dream Drop. And then there's Kingdom Hearts 3. I think I'm going to try to do one more game. Let's talk about 358.5 days. Then we could do 3 games next time and end on Kingdom Hearts 3. How's that sound to you guys? Alright. So the next game I replayed was 358.5 days. And I didn't actually replay this one. I just rewatched the cutscenes as part of that 1.5 plus 2.5 bundle. And around the same time that I was playing this game, my therapist introduced me to a concept I didn't know before. This concept is called codependency. The definition of codependency is, quote, a behavioral condition in a relationship where one person enables another person's addiction, poor mental health, immaturity, irresponsibility, or underachievement. I started to realize that this is what was going on in high school with my friends. I couldn't find a reason to live or even get up in the mornings, so I found that reason in my friends. I was too afraid to deal with my problems on my own. I wanted help. Whoops, my computer made a noise. Oh well. I was too afraid to deal with my problems on my own, and I wanted help solving all of my issues. That's why I chose to solve all of my friends' issues instead, because if I could solve theirs, maybe they could help me with mine. Maybe this codependency I took on. If I could solve all of theirs, maybe they could help me with mine. And that right there is codependency. I took on all their responsibilities because I was afraid of my own. And then I pushed all my responsibilities onto them because I felt like they owed me for helping them. I thought at the time, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. I thought that if we could help each other with everything, we could both be happy and healthy, and neither of us would ever want to leave each other's side. Of course, this led to overwhelming anxiety, depression, and eventually the loss of my friendship. My friend M and I were both feeding into each other's addictions, poor mental health, immaturity, and irresponsibility. During the time I was rewatching this game, I was in a relationship. My girlfriend, called her A, but I said it in my last video, Amanda. I hope she doesn't get mad at me for saying her name here. I'm not saying her last name, so that's good. I don't know if I've said my name on here. That's probably a good thing. Whatever. Anyway, during the time I was rewatching this game, I was in a relationship. My girlfriend Amanda and I had been together about 2 years at this point. This game helped me to realize that I was beginning to bring some of those same codependent behaviors into my relationship with Amanda. This game helped me to realize that, left to my own devices, I naturally drift towards an attitude of codependency. Why do I do this? Why would I drift back into codependency when I know that it's not healthy? Why would I put somebody I love through that kind of anxiety? I know it's not okay, but once again, these cycles in our lives won't ever stop until we can recognize that the cycle is occurring. Roxas and Shion, to me, represent another codependent relationship. Every time one of them is lacking, they take power from the other so they can be whole again. In 358.5 days, neither one of them can ever truly be whole without hurting the other. I didn't want this for my girlfriend and me. I don't ever want to put anyone through that sort of pain again. Falling back into these codependent cycles is a fear of mine, one which I feel I must be vigilant to protect my loved ones from. So then why do I gravitate towards these cycles? And where do they come from? First, I had to realize that I have the power to take care of myself. I still have trouble realizing this one. There's a lot of times where I feel like I can't take care of myself, or I don't have the ability to do something. I don't feel like I fully have that power. And because I don't feel like I have that power, the responsibility of taking care of myself falls onto the people around me. Just like Shion would fall asleep and need others to keep an eye on her. I have those same traits. Sometimes I still feel like I can't help myself from relying on those around me. Sometimes I don't feel like I have the power to take care of myself. But it's still my duty to at least get up and try. Just get up and try to take care of myself. That just means so much. It's saying, I don't know if I can, but I'm going to do my best anyway. And that's at least a step forward from saying, I can't. It's at least a step forward from saying, I won't. But there is something else behind this as well. I can feel a fear. But what am I afraid of? After thinking about it for a long time, I started to realize I'm afraid of being alone. I don't want to be alone. I feel like I've spent so much time being alone that the concept terrifies me. And I don't mean the concept of having alone time. I have alone time every day and I love it. I'm a very solitary person, very introverted person. I value alone time, but that's different from the concept of being alone, the concept of not having others to reach out to when you need them, the concepts of betrayal and abandonment. Roxas, it seems to me, felt betrayed and abandoned by the people around him. He felt betrayed by the organization which took him in and then used him as a tool for their own gain. He felt betrayed by Axel for keeping secrets from him. He felt abandoned by Axel, and this is evident to me when he speaks the line, "No one would miss me." He felt abandoned by Shion when she disappears from his life. I felt betrayed and abandoned as well. I felt betrayed by my grandparents who hurt me. I felt abandoned by my parents who left me in the care of my grandparents. I felt abandoned by my big sister who disappeared from my life when I was only 6 years old. I felt betrayed and abandoned by my friends in high school who turned on me and told me they wanted nothing to do with me. I felt betrayed and abandoned by my mother who moved away and remains distant until this day. I felt abandoned by C and R when they eventually went off to college, even though I also felt extremely proud of them, and I know that what they did was the right choice for their own life. And I believe this is why I drift towards the habits of codependency. It's because I don't want anyone else to leave. I find it so hard to meet new people and make new friends. I find family impossible to replace. And I want that deep, lasting connection, almost as if I want to share a Paopu fruit with everyone in my life. And because of that, I dive into their problems. I try to help the people around me and support them in any way that I can, because there's something deep down inside me that believes that if I can be of value to them, then they won't want to leave me. And if they don't want to leave me, then I can lean on them as support. 358.5 days helped me to realize these things. I realized that I needed to be able to support myself. And I realized that I needed to find value within myself. I realized that just because a friend leaves doesn't mean they abandoned you. I still feel close to my friends C and R, even though they live far away now. They have been gone for a while, but we still stay in touch. Just as with Roxas and Axel. Just because it may seem like a friend has abandoned you, it doesn't mean that they have. I am still afraid of falling back into codependency with my friends and loved ones. But I'm proud to say that I'm starting to be more and more aware of when those habits arrive. And I think that's a good place to end for today, you guys. I got 3 pretty important games to go over next time. Kingdom Hearts 2, Coded, and Dream Drop. Coded is going to have more in it than you think. It was more important to me this time around than the first time. Yeah, that's it though. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to my story. If anybody needs to talk about anything, please message me. Please feel free. I'll try and talk to you guys. And I hope you guys can find value in these videos, because I really am opening myself up bare for you guys. I'm just releasing everything. I'm talking about everything. I don't want to hold anything back anymore. I want to be transparent. I want the whole world to know the pain that I've gone through. Not so they pity me, but so they know who I am. And so I can help others who are going through this pain as well. Because fuck hiding it. I'm tired of hiding it. I'm just gonna be me. And this is me. So I hope you all guys all stay true to yourselves as well. May your heart be your guiding key. And see you next time.